I meet with them for 3 to 5 sessions. The first session, what I always love starting with, it makes sense just from a logic sense, but it's also part of, you were talking very early on about the emotions. Well, one of the ways that you can manage emotions as a mediator is to give your clients a task. Well, what is more of a task than filling out a form? Here, let's go over, they fill out a schedule of asset and debts. Right. And this gets into your left brain, right brain stuff. Okay. So your right brain, your emotions and all that. But if somebody's emoting and getting all upset, put a pencil in their hand or a pen in their hand and go, a list. Oh, okay. What would you like me, make a list of all the reasons why you think the property should be listed for sale, rather than emoting, getting all upset. I can't believe you want to take the kids out of school. I can't believe it. Okay, hold on. You can do it that way. And that's why my first session is always that information gathering, because that entire first session, you want to handle non-emotional issues and you want them to see that they can be successful without getting emotional. I think a lot of mediators make a mistake. They immediately start with parenting. Well, that's the most important. No, it can be. For me, that's the easiest mediated issue, but it's the most fearful and emotionally charged issue for a lot of people. And if you immediately start with, well, let's talk about the children because we know that's the most important thing, you're starting with clients who haven't even experienced a mediation session. You're putting them all in their right side of their brain of their terror and their fear of, that fight or flight. Oh my God, what am I going to do about my children? Or I'm going to miss them so much. And that's how they start seeing mediation. And they're just not in their best mindset. So I always start the process with very nuts and bolts and also because you sure can't talk about dividing the pie if you don't know what it is. True. You don't know what it's made of or how many pieces it has. How can we start dividing it?
So you instantly are diffusing the situation.
Daily. So it's a great, there's just so many benefits to information gathering. You start with that because not only is that what you need as a mediator to figure out an action plan, if you don't know what all the assets are, how can you say, oh, you're going to need an appraisal there? Or how about the retirement? You're going to have to go back and get that statement on the date of marriage, or we're going to have to talk about that. So my information gathering session, the action item coming out of it is your action plan. Okay, now that we've gone through all these assets and I've gone back over everything you listed, for example, just on the real estate, whenever someone's listed the real estate, I'll go through the whole disclosure, then I'll come back and I'll go, okay, let's talk about the family residence. When did you buy it? How much was the down payment? Have you talked with each other about it? Do you want to list it for sale? What is the plan? Do you have a price that you've agreed to? And you do that for every single piece of real estate that's on that. And you do that first. Right. You don't start talking about parenting and do that for 3 sessions and then turn around and go, well, what do you want to do with the house? Well, doesn't that kind of impact parenting? If we don't know who's staying where or where you're living or where you're moving.
Right.
So it makes sense. So I do property first in that first session. And then after we've done that, I send them their disclosures on email. And then we set up the second meeting. And if they're going to be gathering more information, like they're getting an appraisal, we'll wait till we have the appraisal before we meet again. Okay. If there's an emergency issue going on, well, then we're not going to wait for appraisals if we've got immediate parenting issues. Or sometimes what happens is they come in for their first session and they're living together, but mom or dad's moving out in a month.
Right.
Well, then I got to go out of my favorite order and start talking about, well, where are you going?
Right.
Do you know where you're going?
Make the decisions quicker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so it's not like I have a lot of flexibility, but usually my order is this: the information gathering, marital property, parenting, and support. And believe it or not, that's exactly how the family law code is organized. Okay. It's property first, children issues, and support. And that's how the numbering is in the code. And that's because it makes sense. So first, who's going to get what? Because that impacts where children live. It impacts how much it costs, what your needs are, and where your children live will impact what your support is. So that's kind of the flow: property, parenting, support. So that's the order.
So much calmer when you look at it from that perspective. I've never heard someone say it that way, but it's absolutely true.
And the other part of that is that's all divorce is. It's 3 issues: dividing property, parenting children, and support. And everything falls under those 3 categories. And it's the same every single divorce. Nobody has any other issues.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of variety under those issues. And, taxes is kind of a hybrid. Taxes is a property issue because it's a debt, right? Or but it's also a support issue. Okay. So it falls under those categories, but you can't name anything that's an issue in divorce that isn't going to land under one of those categories, in terms of what you legally have to agree to. Now, I also believe that there are at least 7 levels of separation in divorce. So there's the legal divorce, the financial divorce, the physical separation. It's actually separation. So, legal separation, physical separation, social impact separation, parenting, you're separated from children, your emotions are another transition, but there's all these things that are going on in addition to those other things. So I'm not saying all of those are covered in 3 categories.
Right.
But what has to be determined to get a judgment is only those 3 areas. In other words, I don't have to solve who's going to visit what friends in the future. I don't have to rearrange your social arrangements. That's definitely out there. You're probably going to have some friends that go with one or the other. I ain't mediating that. I'm hired to get a judgment entered, and I have to cover property, parenting, and support. And so that's another thing that I think some mediators will make a mistake is I'm not saying that your emotional health or the social issues aren't important.
Right.
But they are, I believe that you have to get the judgment you have to get the divorce, then turn to recovery. But people that are trying to use the divorce process to recover from the divorce, you can't, it makes it more challenging. You're trying to get a grand slam, get a base hit, and then we'll worry, but get your settlement in place, then fix your emotions. And hopefully that process of getting that divorce in place doesn't damage your children or hurt you more emotionally. And I'm saying it's all important. And some people, it becomes more important to focus on those issues, but that's only 10 or 20% of my clients. The majority of my clients, exactly how I lay it out, works for them. But there are those clients where I immediately have to send them to therapy or a coach.
Right. There is a specific flow, a general flow to a divorce. And some people need just a little bit of extra coaching or, therapy.
And they can get that.
Absolutely.
But to put that in the mediator's hands on top of all the other things that the mediator has to do. Now, I like to think I have a certain skill of the conflict resolution, and I know I can help with the emotions. And I've taken a lot of courses, and I often feel like a psychologist in the mediation. So I'm not saying, nope, we're not going there. It's all about this and that. But what I'm saying is you can't lose sight of what I call the core proceedings. And the core proceedings are this couple's got to get started. They've got to they've got to have legal paperwork, and they have to have a settlement. And they're not, you haven't done your job if you don't get them through that whole linear process.